Welcome back to the Sports Fix on this Thursday evening. It's AFL time. It's time to pick 9 winners. And who do we go to? Yes, it is Jase the Statman. Get ready, folks. These are the 9 winners for round number 2.
Thanks, Clayton. Yes, the Sports Fix. Time to have a look at our AFL tips this week, or mine at least. And, well, this time last year I would have said don't follow my tips. No idea. But at the moment, I'm heading the table of our tips after round 1. That can turn around very, very quickly. And it could start tonight at the MCG, where there will be 70,000 plus fans. That's right. Up to 75,000 is the capacity, and they'll get 70,000 there tonight, I reckon. Carlton hosting Collingwood at the MCG. This should be an absolute beauty. Now, Collingwood struggling a little bit in their first game against the Western Bulldogs to score. That seems to be a problem. De Goey's going to have to spend some time up forward for them rather than have flashes through the midfield. He seems to be their only way home. For Carlton, they looked pretty good against the reigning premiers, I've got to say. It was really just 10 minutes of football that kept them from winning that game. They've got some players back in tonight, which is of great interest. And their recruit from GWS in Zach Williams will make his Carlton debut. And Jack Martin is back in as well. 2 really important ins. Eddie Betts has missed out. He could start as the sub, or the medical sub, sorry. Maybe Oscar McDonald gets the gig again after his performance last week, but he didn't make the 22. Jack Silvani is out with a shoulder. Look, I think the Blues are good things to win this, and I reckon they'll win by 25 points at the very least. So we get on the Blues tonight at the MCG. Tomorrow night, a huge game down at Geelong at the Cattery GMHBA Stadium. I think I got that right. The Cats 0-1 taking on the Brisbane Lions 0-1, who had a disappointing loss to the Sydney Swans last week. I think the Cats in their second half against the Crows looked much better than they did going into half-time. The Brisbane Lions started the game like a shot from a gun and then were rubbish after quarter time. Look, I think the Cats will win this at their home deck and bounce back, which will leave the Lions 0-2 and struggling. 2 teams fighting it out on Saturday to go 2-0, and who would have thought this at the start of the year? The Sydney Swans hosting the Adelaide Crows at the SCG. Everybody knows that I barrack for the Crows, but in this game I can't tip them. Look, after their performance against Geelong, which was fantastic and lauded rightly throughout the week, the Sydney Swans were just as impressive in their game against the Brisbane Lions, and they have a fairly handy inclusion this week in by the name of Lance Franklin, who's coming back and could terrorise the Crows. He's done a number on them in the past. He should be fit and firing. He looms large. The Crows missing Daniel Talia at the moment. Got some rookie defenders who could be found wanting against the big boudoirs, so I'm going to go with the Swans there on Saturday afternoon. In the twilight clash at Adelaide Oval, Port Adelaide welcome Essendon to town, and Essendon gave up a 40-point lead last week against the Hawks. You could not tip them against Port Adelaide, who at the moment are my tips to win the flag, or at least be their grand final day. I think they're right on the mark at the moment, the Port Adelaide side, and should win this very, very comfortably. It's heaven versus hell on Saturday night, the clash between the Saints and the Demons at Marvel Stadium. We'll see the Saints get up here. They had a litmus test against a fair to middling GWS, and they got the job done there. Melbourne last week beat a very depleted Fremantle side unconvincingly at the MCG, and I think the Saints are a good thing to get the job done there. We go up to Metricon Stadium, where the Gold Coast Suns will take on an undermanned and poorly skilled North Melbourne outfit. The Gold Coast Suns were about as impressive as you can be in a loss last week against the West Coast Eagles in the West. It's a long road trip. Hopefully they've recovered well. Matt Rao is out with a knee, as we know, for at least half the season, but he was out very early in that game against the West Coast Eagles, and the Suns were outstanding. Jack Bowes was fantastic. Their half-back line was exceptional, and if they put in a performance half as good as that, they'll be too good for North Melbourne, who are really struggling and look like the season's wooden spooners already. On Sunday, we start with the Hawks taking on Richmond. Richmond had their round 1 win against Carlton, as we know. The Hawks stormed home to win by just a point over the Bombers. Morale-boosting victory for them, but they're coming up against something entirely different in round 2, and I think the Tigers will beat them at the MCG fairly comfortably. At Marvel Stadium in the 2:50 time slot on Sunday sees the Western Bulldogs hosting the West Coast Eagles. This is match of the round stuff, this. The Eagles weren't overly convincing in their win against the Gold Coast Suns, as I mentioned earlier. The Western Bulldogs were pretty convincing against Collingwood. They held sway for most of the night, it's got to be said. At their home deck, it's hard to go past the Bulldogs here. Adam Treloar, if he comes along and improves, his output in round one was a little bit down, and you can put that down to playing his old side, but they've got a host of midfield options that are up and firing. Dunkley was outstanding. Bontempelli, outstanding. Liberatore, outstanding. They've got midfield options for days, the Western Bulldogs. The Eagles were a bit down in their midfield against the Suns. Andrew Gaff was poor. He'll need to bounce back. I think the Dogs win this. Very, very tight one. 1-10, maybe the line, even though some of the betting companies have got the Dogs clear favourites. I think it'll be a bit closer than that. And the final match is the wild card on the Sunday afternoon at Optus Stadium in Perth. Fremantle will be hosting their first home game of the year. They welcome GWS to town, who weren't terrible last week, it's got to be said, the Giants. They hit the front in the last quarter and for a period looked like winners against the Saints, who made the finals last year. Fremantle are depleted. Injury has really hit them hard, particularly in the defensive stakes. Now, GWS's forward line is a bit of a concern at the moment. Toby Green needs to get forward and kick some more goals. Himmelberg hasn't really taken over the number one mantle, and it's hard to do that. The loss of Jeremy Cameron certainly hurts GWS. But look, one thing we know about the Fremantle Dockers, and both of these teams actually are injury-ravaged. One thing we know about the Dockers is they play a completely different brand of football at home than what they do away. I think they'll find a way to get over the line here in an upset. I'm going to tip the Dockers in a really close one against the Giants to win on their home deck. So just to recap, to finish off with tonight, it'll be the Blues over the Magpies, the Cats over the Lions tomorrow night, the Swans over the Crows on Saturday, Port Adelaide over the Bombers, and St Kilda over the Demons, and the Gold Coast Suns over North Melbourne. Sunday's matches, we've got the Tigers beating Hawthorn, we've got the Western Bulldogs over the West Coast Eagles, and the Fremantle Dockers at home to beat GWS. That's your tips for this week, Clayton.
There you go, folks. There are your 9 winners. Good luck with your footy tipping this weekend. But, Jase, I'm a bit confused here because a few weeks back you told me that Geelong, yes, Geelong, were going to win the flag. You could give it to them before the season even started because they'd recruited so well. They were going to be unbeatable. You've jumped off them, and now you're jumping on Port Adelaide. You've got me confused, especially because I know how much you love your Adelaide Crows. So you're going to have to explain that one. I think we'll need to talk to the flow man, and this you need to follow up on this conversation with us because I'm a bit confused here. But I'm glad you've done it. I certainly agree with you, but you've just got me a bit confused. But there you go. There's the footy tips for Jase that he's picked for round number 2, the 9 winners. Just quickly recapping: Carlton, Geelong, Swans, Port Adelaide, the Saints, Gold Coast Tigers, Bulldogs, and the Freo Dockers. We got some basketball, some NBL we're going to be discussing with the Dan the Man coming up next.